guys, it's Miss Kady with Wonderland Performing Arts, and I'm coming to you with another Geek Out session. And this week, I decided to try doing a classical musical because I've been talking about a lot of like newer musicals and like recent Broadway musicals. So I decided let's go take a little stroll down memory lane. And so I wanted to talk today about The Music Man. The Music Man is classic, love so much. It was written by Meredith Willson, the book's music and lyrics, and it was based on a story by Meredith Willson and Franklin Lacey. This show went on Broadway in 1957. I was like, oh my god, crazy. And it has had multiple revivals since going on Broadway. So they had a revival in 1980 and in 2000. And they also have a couple of film adaptations and television adaptations. A film adaptation in 1962 and a TV adaptation in 2003, which I've never heard that there was a TV adaptation, so I'm kind of interested. And when it was on Broadway, it actually won the Tony for Best Musical, so I thought that was pretty cool. And some of our notable Broadway cast is we have Robert Preston, who plays Professor Harold Hill, Barbara Cook playing Marion, Iggy Wolfington as Marcellus Washburn, and David Burns as Mayor Shin. One second. This is going to be an annoying little thing. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay. And that's just to name a few, because this is like a big cast. Because there's like people of the town, there's and in the town members there's like the teenagers of the town come back a few times, and then there's like the ladies of the town, they have a few appearances, so it's like a bunch of people. But we'll talk about all those people. Okay. Let's start. And this show is set in River City, Iowa. I just want to make sure that was, oh wait, I have it right here. I was ahead of myself. I was like, did I write down the location? I got it. My notes today are long. Like, this is a big show. Like, we got some stuff to talk about. Usually mine are like a page, maybe two. This is like full 2 pages. So we're gonna have fun. Okay. So we're starting in 1912. So we have this traveling salesman. His name is Charlie Cowell. He is, and some like other traveling salesmen are complaining about like innovations that are being made that are making their jobs more difficult because they're traveling salesmen, and like traveling salesmen aren't going to be really needed in the upcoming years. But Harold Hill, who is our main character, like doesn't feel this problem, because he's a con man. And so he can kind of figure out his way into making money and, tricking people. That's kind of his thing. So he makes a profit in this show specifically by forming a band and collecting money on the uniforms and the instruments and stuff, and then he skips town. And so that's what the whole show is about, him doing that. And so the first thing we see is Charlie and them complaining about the innovations and Hill himself, and then we see Harold Hill arrive in River City, Iowa. So that's where our story starts. Harold runs into an old friend. His name is Marcellus Washburn, and he lives in River City. He tells Hill about Marion, who is the only trained musician in town, and she gives piano lessons. And so if he's gonna like start a band, he should probably get on her side, you know what I mean? And so Marcellus also tells Hill about the fact that there's a new pool table that's being brought into the billiard hall that they have. So Hill decides to use this to his advantage, and he says that he decides to convince the parents of River City that there's going to be trouble and like sin that comes from having that pool table. And so he has like a whole song about how he got trouble, and this whole show is so funny because it's just Harold Hill, like, conning everyone into thinking that, like, all these things are bad, but really, like, he's the con man the whole time. So after he convinces all of them that this is going to be trouble, of course, no one decides to go to the billiard hall. And Hill ends up following Marion home, and he, like, tries to flirt with her and stuff. And this is only the first time. This happens multiple times. But she ends up, like, ignoring his flirting and, like, goes home. Um, so Marion is shown in her house giving a piano lesson to a little girl named Amaryllis, and Marion's arguing with her mother while this is happening, about like standards in men and like what she should be, why Marion should be, you know, settling down and all these things, but really Marion is just like over all of River City, honestly. And she ends up telling her mom about the man who like followed her home. So Winthrop, who is Marion's 10-year-old little brother, arrives home, and he's actually teased by the little girl that Marion's giving piano lessons to, Amaryllis, about his lisp. He has like a really bad lisp, and he's really self-conscious about it. And so he gets teased by her, even though Amaryllis kind of has a little crush on him. Okay, so next day, Mayor, oh, I'm gonna get that so confused now that I'm like thinking about it. I'm gonna say Mayor and Marion. It's gonna be confusing. Okay, Mayor Shin and his wife are leading Independence Day celebrations at the school gym. Tommy, who is this like troublemaker kid, sets off a firecracker, and so, you know, everything kind of goes up, and everyone's like freaking out because they're like, what are we gonna do about these kids, and blah blah blah. So Hill announces that he's going to be starting a boys band that's going to prevent trouble caused by that pool table scandal that we talked about earlier. Because they're assuming that that's the reason why these boys are bad. So the mayor, who owns the billiard parlor, tries to get the school board to like get Hill's credentials. But this is another thing that happens multiple times in the show. I think both of these things happen like 3 times. They try to get his credentials, and because he's a con man, he like knows how to quickly get out of situations. So he sets up a barbershop quartet. He literally sets up like 4 quartets in the show to like get himself out of situations. So he sets up this barbershop quartet to anger the mayor. And he also decides, he sets up the mayor's eldest daughter with that troublemaker Tommy we just talked about, the one who set out the firecracker, just to like piss him off. I'm just like, this is hilarious. So here's the second time. Hill tries to make another advance at Marion, and he's rejected again. But this just determines him more because that's just the man that Harold Hill is. So we're shifted gears, and we start seeing the town ladies, and they're talking about the excitement for the band, and Professor Harold Hill has also decided to set up like a ladies dance committee. So they're like talking about how excited they are about it and yada yada. So after Hill mentions to the ladies about Marion, the ladies give him false information about her. So they talk about how Marion had this affair with this like now deceased miser, and that's the reason why she has all the library books, and because she's Marion the librarian. That's like one of the songs. Very good song. So the miser apparently gave the library to the town and left all the books to Marion, which is what the ladies say. And the ladies are warning Hill about how Marion always advocates for like really dirty books like Chaucer, and like it's just like regular books that are taught in schools, and like they don't want it being taught because they think it's dirty and yada yada whatever. Where am I at? I see it. Okay. I went off on a tangent. Okay, part 2. The school board arrives again, and they're like trying to get Hill's credentials, and Hill leads them in a song, and then he disappears. And then they're like, where did Hill go? So yeah, he's constantly getting himself out of these situations because he's a con man. He doesn't have any credentials. He's not actually a professor, even though everyone calls him Professor Harold Hill. The next day, Hill goes to the library to make yet another, the third at this point, advance at Marion, and they end up like having this little like dance number where like the teenagers come into it because they're like at the library, and Hill dances with Marion, and Hill ends up kissing Marion, and she goes to slap him for it, and she accidentally slaps Tommy instead, so yikes. And then Hill decides to sign up all the boys for the band, including Marion's younger brother, Winthrop. So Marion has a conversation with her mother about why she's not interested in Hill. And she thinks that that's the reason why Winthrop was signed up for it, but also she kind of thinks that it's a good idea that he, joins the band. Especially because he's, like, really self-conscious about his lisp, so it might give him a little self-confidence. Page 2. Marion decides to go to Mayor Shin with information she found. She found this book, the Indiana State Educational Journal, and it has evidence against Hill. So, Hill doesn't find this out till much later in the show, but she found this journal that said that, the conservatory that Hill claims to have graduated from in 1905 actually wasn't even started until 1906. So there was, like, no way that he could have actually had credentials from there, at least. So she didn't really know, but she knew that it wasn't from the conservatory that he was saying it was from. So it's evidence again against Hill. So if she brings it to the mayor, obviously everyone will know that he's a fraud. And they're interrupted because there's a Wells Fargo wagon that comes up and it delivers the band's instruments. So Marion doesn't see the mayor yet, and she sees her brother who's getting his new cornet, and he's really excited, and he's so excited about the fact that he gets to play music that he literally, like, forgets to be self-conscious about the fact that he has a lisp, so because he's just so excited. So that makes Marion, like, really happy and appreciative to Hill that, he did that for her brother, even though he's still a con man, So she gives that book to Mayor Shin anyway, but she ripped out the incriminating piece of paper, so he has the book, but doesn't actually have the incriminating information. And that's where Act 1 ends. So Act 2, we are brought to, the ladies, rehearsing. They're rehearsing a dance, a classical dance, and the school board is practicing a quartet and they're both practicing for this ice cream social that they're gonna have. And then Marcellus and the teenagers interrupt and, like, take over the space with a dance, and Hill grabs Marion to dance. So because Hill grabbed Marion to dance, and at this point the ladies are, like, really loving Professor Harold Hill, the town ladies asked Marion to join their dance committee, and they tell her that they reversed their opinions on her dirty books that she was talking about. And so, because they're like, oh, Professor Harold Hill was the one who recommended them to us, and we loved them. So even though she said that they were, like, good books, they were like, oh, they're dirty. And so he said it, and they were like, oh, great. So, annoying. Whatever. They have a really, like, annoying set of songs called Pick a Little, Talk a Little, and they're really, really annoying, but honestly kind of catchy, so that's how I feel about it. Okay, so we talked about the books that night. Okay, so later that night, the school board tries again for the third time to get Hill's credentials, and of course, he distracts him again with another song. I don't know how he does this. So Charlie, okay, wait, this is where it gets a little bit confusion. Okay, so he distracts him with a song and he gets away. And then we see Charlie, the traveling salesman from, like, really early in the story, that he has come back. He has come to River City because he's heard about Harold Hill, and he is asking Marion for directions to the mayor's house because he has evidence against Harold Hill saying that he's a fraud. And so Charlie has only, like, a couple of minutes until his train leaves. And so he's like, I need to find the mayor quickly so I can give him this so that I can give it to him and then get on my train. Marion distracts him by flirting with him. And at the moment that the train whistle blows, she kisses him to make sure that he doesn't get to his train. And so he, like, angrily leaves to go and catch his train. And so he leaves, and then Hill comes to the house, because they're at Marion's house. And Hill and Marion, like, talk about the rumors that have been spreading about both of them, and they kind of, like, agree that the rumors are products of jealousy of other people, so they kind of like, get over the rumors. And Hill asks Marion to meet him at the footbridge, and she accepts. So Hill goes to the footbridge, and she stays and like waits out. She stays at home for a little while before like going to meet him, and Marcellus shows up at the footbridge. So it's just the two of them for now, Marcellus and Hill, and they're talking about how the uniforms have just arrived for the band. And he also warns Hill that the parents are gonna want to hear the band play in uniform. You know what I mean? Like, they're eventually gonna want to hear what they've been up to. And they're probably gonna want to hear it at the ice cream social, because there's gonna be a dancing, and there's gonna be that quartet we were talking about earlier, so of course the band's gonna play. But Marcellus is, like, suggesting that Hill should leave town, because obviously he's been doing nothing for the band, because, you know, it doesn't exist, it's a con man's show. So Marion eventually gets there, and she confesses her love for him, and she also confesses that she's been knowing about the phony credentials since the beginning of knowing him, and she actually ends up showing him the paper that she ripped out from the book. So Marcellus tells Hill that Charlie has been trying to, like, expose him as a phony. Oh, wait, I missed something. I'm sorry. I just read this and I realized I didn't write it. So Marcellus had left before Marion came. So right now it's just Marion and Hill. And then Marcellus comes back. And he comes back with Charlie. And so Marcellus and Charlie are back. So now we got 4 people. And Marcellus tells Hill that Charlie has been trying to, like, expose him as a phony, and Charlie insults Marion because of, you know, flirting with him, and he realized that she was just, like, trying to make him miss the train. And Hill, like, ends up knocking down Charlie for what he said about Marion. And then Marcellus, like, tries to convince Hill again to leave town, and so Hill doesn't, of course. So Charlie leaves, and Charlie goes to tell the mayor and the townspeople of Hill's plan. And Charlie tells the town and says that Hill comes in and he's going to make a band, he's going to collect uniform money, he's going to collect instrument money, and then he's going to leave town with all your money. And so commotion happens. All kinds of stuff happens. People are, like, trying to find Hill and all this stuff. And so in the midst of the commotion, Winthrop finds Hill, sees Hill, and asks Hill to direct the band. And in front of, like, a bunch of people, Hills truthfully says he can't, because he doesn't know how. And it was all fraud. And so Hill says that he wanted Winthrop to join the band so he didn't feel sorry for himself, which Marion explains that Hill provided something for the town to be happy about. And this apparently wasn't enough at the time, but the constable arrives and puts Hill in handcuffs. So we see all of the town gathered about Hill's situation, and the mayor suggests that Hill should be punished, but a lot of the town is against it, even though he, like, almost conned them all out of their money. And the mayor says that he, like, promised to teach your boys how to play, and, like, he stole money and was gonna leave. And they're like, there wasn't even a band. And then all of a sudden, all of the boys in the band show up with their instruments and their uniforms on, and they're ready to play. And so Hill's like, I guess we have a band. And so he goes to play, like, they go to play, and, like, he goes to direct them, and they kind of suck, like, a little bit. Like, it's barely recognizable what they're trying to play. But the families are thrilled that they are even, like, doing it. And so the families get really excited. And the mayor ends up, like, shaking Hill's hand and, like, letting him go. And so, and then him and Marion are together and they sing the finale, and that's the show. Like, it's so funny. Like, it's such a crazy, like, show, because there's so many, like, twists and turns, and I can't that he literally starts, like, 4 or 5 quartets because he just, like, won't give his credentials. I mean, he didn't have any, but I think it's funny that he kept, like, distracting them with music, and he was just, like, especially for a man who says he can't, like, give music lessons, always distracting with a song. But yeah, that's the show. I love this show so much. I saw it when I was in high school, at a neighboring high school, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was hilarious. Um, Especially all the songs that they have, like where they randomly like run in and interrupt, and like there's like the point in the beginning of Act Two where the teenagers interrupt. They have the song called Shapoopy, and it's so funny. It's like it's just a lot of like classic like good feeling songs, I guess you could say. Um, and it's all like really over the top. Like You Got Trouble, like they're talking about how the pool table is gonna cause sin and corruption, and it's just such a funny song because it's like Hill doesn't believe that for real. He's just trying to con them, and they'll believe him. So he's like, "Yeah, that pool table is gonna cause trouble." Like, what? It's hilarious. Like, I kind of adore Harold Hill's like mind. Like, I think he's hilarious. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about audition songs for this show. So Marion is a soprano. Like, that's it. Every song she has is like a very classical soprano song. And then Hill's songs are more probably a little more on baritone. Except for Marion the Librarian. He's got a really, really low register for that. So I feel like when it comes to this show, there's a bunch of different choices. I think a lot of these songs that they have, Hill has a lot of solos in a lot of his songs, a lot of the bigger songs, so you could probably kind of piece those together. Like, I think that would be fine. Of like which pieces, because he kind of has his range is bigger. You could probably do a lot more with his, but her songs, like a female songs for these, would probably be, you probably need a higher register soprano voice. She has My White Knight, Good Night My Someone, not Light a Rose. Yeah, Light a Rose, Will I Ever Tell You. It's the quartet singing sings part of a song, and then she sings Will I Ever Tell You, and then they sing it like on top of each other, like it's together. And then so that if you just sang like her part, you could probably make that like partially an audition part. But there's a lot of good material in this show. There's a lot of like little pieces of songs that are like soloed out that you could probably take as audition material and such. But yeah, that's kind of all I have today for this little segment. Just wanted to go a little classical route. I know a lot of this stuff I've been doing was a little more modern, and like new Broadway. So I wanted to make sure that we were looking at some older stuff. But yeah, that's all I have for today. So I hope y'all have a great week. Bye, guys.